Right, we'll go ahead and get her started. Okay. Attribution theory is a theory that tries to explain others' behaviors. And of course, the best way for us to survive is to understand what people are thinking. So if I've told you this, I was at Cracker Barrel, I don't know, about 6 months ago, and there was a sketchy looking guy in there. Now normally when I go into a room, and I have to tell you, one of the things that I do is I gauge as to whether anybody's dangerous in the room. It's just a natural thing. I don't know. It has something to do with being in the military. It has something to do with being in dangerous places. It has something to do with working in the emergency room. Seeing people that are shot, seeing people that have been stabbed by somebody. Anyway, it has something to do with something. Anytime I go into a room, I always gauge as to whether people are dangerous or whether they're not dangerous. So that's one of the things that I do. Why am I saying this? Oh, we're talking about attribution theory. So what I do, I'll look at somebody, I'll look at Francis and try to determine if Francis is a danger. Of course, it only takes a nanosecond to figure out if somebody looks dangerous or if they don't look dangerous. Are they large? Do they look like they're packing heat or something? You're looking at all these different things, and this is known as attribution theory. Attribution tends to be attributed either to external causes or internal causes. So if somebody acts in a certain way, normally I'm a fairly easygoing guy. If all of a sudden I go off on somebody and start yelling and I get real angry, you guys might think that, wow, that obviously since he's normally not very aggressive, that must be something external. Something has made him mad. Because normally he's fairly easygoing. He's a lot easier to get along with. However, what if you haven't had a lot of contact with this select individual? Or no contact at all? You just come up on somebody and they're yelling and screaming and they're beating their dog. Well, you have no idea why he's hitting the dog. But you assume that he's just a bad man that hurts dogs. You assume that it's internal. You assume that everything is internal. But if you know the person, then you know what's external and what's internal. Normally this is the way they act, and they don't act that way normally, so it must be something external. But if you don't know the person and you see them in an angry situation, you will probably assume that it is internal, that this is a naturally angry person. Are there naturally angry people? There are, yeah, there are. And unfortunately, we've run into them from time to time. When we're talking about attribution theory, one of the things that we can talk about is people being sexually attracted to one another. And unfortunately, males have a stronger sex drive. They have a more constant sex drive. For that reason, a lot of times when a female is friendly to a male, he assumes that she is actually sexually attracted to him. This is a misattribution. Females can be nice to males without them being sexually attracted to them. Really? Yes. If a man smiles at you, if a woman smiles at a man, it doesn't mean that she's sexually attracted to the man. But there are a lot of men that don't understand this. There are men who think that if a female smiles, then that has something to do with sexual attraction. And unfortunately, of course, this will sometimes lead to a situation where the male becomes more aggressive with the female, and it can lead to sexual harassment, or it can actually lead to rape, unfortunately. And this is a misattribution. He's misinterpreting what her signals. And sometimes they can misinterpret the signals for years, assuming that, oh, she's really into me. Every time I see her, she smiles. But she's really into like everybody, because like she smiles at everybody. No, of course he doesn't know that. And he doesn't care about that. What he cares about is the fact that every time she sees him, she smiles. Misattributions are especially likely when the male in question is in a position of power. Presidents of the United States, governors of states, A good example is Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton was the governor of Arkansas, and then he became president of the United States. Both when he was in Arkansas and when he was president of the United States, he got into trouble because women came on to him. He was young, he wasn't that bad looking, got a funny looking nose, but that's not important. Women still seem to be attracted to him to some extent, or maybe they weren't. Monica Lewinsky, if you've ever heard the story of Monica Lewinsky, you probably understand that Monica Lewinsky is the one that seduced Bill. It wasn't the fact that he seduced her. He allowed her to have sex with him. A lot of times a boss will misinterpret submissiveness or friendly behavior as sexual invitations. She's not really flirting. What she's doing is she's being nice to the boss. And by being nice to the boss, that means smiling, that means laughing at his jokes, those kinds of things. Well, you know, bosses are not the smartest people in the world. Sometimes they misinterpret what is going on, and they think it is sexual attraction. They think that she's trying to seduce him. Paula Jones, okay, so we all know of the Monica Lewinsky case with Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky. But there was actually a case before that in Arkansas, and the case had to do with Paula Jones. Paula Jones was working at the front desk at a hotel. Bill Clinton and his entourage checked into the hotel. She was at the front desk, and evidently she smiled at him. He thought that well, who knows what he thought. Anyway, according to her, he called her up to his suite after that. And when she came in, he was pulling his pants down, wanting her to have sex with him. And of course, she went screaming from the room and whatever. Nothing happened. She didn't say anything about it until he became president of the United States. And then all of a sudden, of course, she decided that somebody contacted her and said, we understand that something may have happened, something untoward may have happened while Bill Clinton was governor of the state. You know, would you bring suit against him? And of course, that's exactly what happened. It was really kind of interesting, however. People didn't believe that that Bill Clinton was attracted to that lady. So what they did, they did a makeover. And after they did the makeover, this is what she looked like. Now, people didn't believe that he would come on to her, but they believed that he would come on to her. As interesting as that is. Now, this is really kind of curious, because people assume that people only come on to attractive people. And if you're kind of funny looking, which she has a little, kind of an oddity about her face, her nose is a little bit too large. She's got a crease down the middle of her nose. I don't know. Anyway, people believed that he came on to her, but they wouldn't believe that he came on to her. That's what was going on. And this has to do with attribution, this has to do with misattribution, this has to do with what people think. Anyway, so she was one of the individuals that brought suit against Bill Clinton, and she's one of the reasons that he was almost impeached. I guess impeachment proceedings were brought against him, but they didn't. He was not impeached. The House voted to impeach him, and the Senate rejected that fact. Okay, males universally tend to be more sexually assertive than women. Of course, this is just a generalization. This may be one reason why 23% of women say that they have been forced into unwanted sex, while only 3% of men admit to forcing women into an unwanted sex act. When he does whatever he does, the woman may be thinking, I don't want to do this, he's forcing me to do this. He may be thinking, she's just playing hard to get. It's not, this is part of the game. And so, that's one of the reasons why only 3% of men realize that they've done something like this, but 23% of women claim that they've been forced into unwanted sex. Unfortunately, the more sexually aggressive a male, the more likely he is to misread women's communication. So you have to be kind of careful as to who in the world you're dating or who in the world you marry, because potentially if they're a relatively conservative individual, they have these interesting mindsets that no means yes, that women are always playing hard to get, that I get to do whatever I want to do, and she's going to enjoy it because that's part of the game, unfortunately. And there are men like that, so you have to be very careful as to who you're interacting with. Fritz Heider was a Gestalt psychologist who first proposed the attribution theory in 1958. Heider noted that when someone else does something, gets in front of you in traffic, or does something to you, doesn't hold the elevator for you, they do it because they're evil, that they're mean. It's an internal reason. There's something wrong with this individual. However, if you do the same thing, you understand that it's external. It had to do with the circumstance. You need to get upstairs. You couldn't hold the elevator because you're already late. So there's an external reason for what you're doing. So and this is known as the attribution theory, fundamental attribution theory. I do things for external reasons. Other people do them bad things because of internal reasons. They're just naturally bad people. Possibly because survival may sometimes depend on inferring individuals' intentions from their behavior, we tend to assume that people's intentions and dispositions correspond. So however they're acting, that's the way they are. And this can sometimes save your life. If you're in a town that you've never been in before, and you're walking down the street and you see some people doing something odd, you had better assume that this behavior is something that may turn into something violent. Because if you don't, you might get stabbed in the heart or something. Yes, ma'am.
So this slide right here is
What? That one? That's me and my kids.
oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, just wait. Yeah,
Oh, it's
it's coming up.
Oh, okay.
It's an old picture. You can see it's 2002. Yeah, it's when we took Roxy. That's when Roxy first went to Florida. So the question is, if so you're walking down the street and you see a guy doing this, is he a dangerous person?
Yeah.
That's a police car. He's kicking the back window out of a police car. Bullet sign. Is it bullet sign? Yeah, bullet sign. It's in Germany. So is he dangerous? Should you stay away from this guy? Unless you like kicking in the windows of police cars, maybe he's not the person you should be taking to the pub or to the bar. Maybe you should stay away from him. He may be a little bit dangerous. Most sociologists agree that most attributions are rational. Harold Kelly attributes attributions to three rational concepts. Is it consistent? Does the person usually behave this way? Is this consistent behavior? Is it distinctive? Does the person behave differently in different situations? When you're home, you probably act differently than you do in the classroom. And when you're home, I hope you talk more than you do in the classroom, because some of you guys don't say anything hardly at all. Are you always mute, or just in the classroom? You never talk to anybody? That would be sad. Distinctiveness. Consensus. Do other people behave similarly in similar situations? So these are the three things that we need to think about when we're thinking about who people are. Is it consistent behavior? Is it distinctive behavior? And do most people act exactly the same way? Okay. A little story. Alex and his new laptop computer. I don't know if you guys have ever had a laptop that didn't work. When Alex brought in his laptop and said it didn't work, the tech rep had to decide whether it was Alex's problem, his inexperience, or a bad computer. I don't know if you've ever taken a computer in, but they usually assume that you're an idiot and you have no clue what's wrong with your computer, or if there's anything at all wrong with the computer. computer people think that that computers can't make mistakes, that only people can make mistakes, not computers. I know, it gets kind of strange. Consistency, Alex is usually pretty good with computers. The guy knows that. He's been around Alex, so Alex knows computers. Distinctiveness, Alex has used this type of computer before, so he should know how to use an Apple. Just because it's different from a PC, he should know how to use an Apple. And consensus, others are having the same problem as Alex. So the assumption is that since Alex is usually pretty good with computers, he understands his computer, and other people are having problems with the same thing in this computer, that probably Alex knows what he's talking about, and there is a problem with the computer. And that has to do with attribution. If I went in to get my computer fixed, I'm not very good with computers. I'm not very good with computers. And probably nobody else is having this problem. Sometimes when you call the computer company, they will assume since nobody else has had this problem, it must be my fault. It can't possibly be the computer's fault because computers never make mistakes. Only I make mistakes. When given information about an individual, people tend to prioritize information to create an overall impression. We look at different things. Some people are more negative, some people are more positive. Some people look at one aspect, other people look at something totally different. Sarah and I are a perfect example. Sarah looks at one thing when she's looking at individuals wanting to take classes, and I look at something totally different. So we disagree a lot. It's really kind of a tragedy that we're not more similar to one another. But we do. We just look at different things. We prioritize information. We'll have the same information, but I prioritize it in one way and she prioritizes it in a totally different way. This means that two people with similar backgrounds but who prioritize information differently will see the same person and the same information differently. I tend to see everything positively. That's why I'm a terrible person to be on a hiring committee, because I always see everything as positive. I try to read things as positive as possible. Part of my positive psychology, I guess. It also helped me in the military, because if you assume that everybody's an idiot, which most of them are, but if you assume everybody's an idiot, then you can't get anything done. You will assume that they're not going to do anything right. So you're constantly harassing people. But if you assume that they know what they're doing and that they will get the job done, and they will get the job done in a timely manner, then it's a lot easier to deal with people if you have a positive attitude about who they are. Okay, let me give you a little story. This is Sarah. When she first arrived at a new school, her reputation of being intelligent, bold, lazy, and sincere preceded her. Everybody knew who she was. She was intelligent, she was bold, but she was lazy, but she was also sincere. When she went out for the cheerleading squad, co-captain Kara was predisposed to disqualify her because of her laziness. She knew she was lazy, and that's what she focused on, the fact that she was lazy. However, co-captain Tara was predisposed to let her on the squad because of her boldness and her intelligence. So people look at different things, and we do the same thing, and we always do the same thing. We prioritize what's important to me, what's not important to me. Okay. And this is one of the reasons why I let you guys, I don't take off for late work. I don't know. I just let you guys turn in things whenever you get it done. And that's okay with me. It doesn't bother me until the end of the semester. I've got half of all the grading to do. Then it bothers me. But until then, it really doesn't bother me. But there are faculty at this institution who demand that you get things in on time. And you need to know who those people are, because you need to get their stuff done on time. If you need to get their stuff done before you get my stuff done, don't worry about my stuff, because it's never late. But people prioritize things. Some things are really important to people. Time is really important to some people. Time is not important to me. I understand. I'm a procrastinator too. I put things off. So if you guys put things off, don't worry about it. Just get her done when you get her done. But not all your work at the end of the semester. That means I have to grade everything. So it'd be kind of nice if you get things done, as you know, in a fairly timely manner. But don't worry about me grading, taking points off because it's late. If I'm pissed, which does happen, when I'm sitting at home and the dog ran off and I can't find them, and then I'm grading your stuff and I'm going, damn it, this is like 3 weeks late. Then I might take a point off or something. But it all depends on whether my dog ran off or not. Whether my wife was friendly to me on the telephone or not, which doesn't happen very often. My wife's really bad at talking on the telephone. Just terrible. She's got this, when she was in the military, she talked on the telephone all the time. And of course, when you're on the telephone, you don't want to, you're a military person, so you can't like, hi honey, how you doing? One of those kinds of things. She can't do that. So she's conditioned to talk like a professional on the telephone. So I call her on the phone and she says, well sir, what's going on? That kind of thing. Thanks honey. I love you too. I can hear the passion in your voice. Not. My poor wife. Okay, so what are we talking about? We're talking about prioritizing. First impressions or primacy effect can leave such a strong, lasting impression that an individual will maintain the impression even in the face of overwhelming, conflicting impressions. So let's say that you first meet somebody. Let's say that you first meet a select individual, and by golly, they're just the cutest little thing you ever saw, and you're attracted to them. What happens next? Well, if you're one of those individuals that the first impressions are really important, that guy can or that individual can murder somebody, and you're going to go, oh no, they're so cute. They've always been really nice to me. And we hear this kind of stuff every time somebody shoots somebody. They go and ask their neighbors, well, did you have any idea that this guy was going to oh no, he's the nicest guy in the world. Came over and shoveled my sidewalk, and I didn't even have to pay him, that kind of thing. Always there, always nice, nicest guy in the world. I don't know. And then he goes out and shoots 59 people in Las Vegas. Not just that, he didn't even know who those people were. He's just dropping rounds on top of them. Oh, that's so bad. It is so bad. First impressions become perhaps the most important key in information integration.
Isn't that what they always say about serial killers? They're such nice people.
They are such nice people. Yeah.
Ted Bundy was charming.
Exactly. Isn't that crazy?
Mm-hmm.
I know, this doesn't make any sense. I had no idea. He was just the nicest person in the whole wide world. Best neighbor I've ever had. Mm-hmm. I'd have him for my neighbor any day. Humans are amazingly adaptive creatures. A small change in social situation will affect drastically how a person feels and reacts to the social circumstance. The difficulty for social scientists, is gauging which factor is the most important, the individual's internal criteria or the change in the social situation. So we have to decide what is the tipping factor. What has made them change so much? Is it something that has happened inside of them, or is it the fact that the social situation is so difficult? One of the difficulties in teaching at this institution is the fact that the social situation is so alien to anything else they've ever been in, unless they're from the reservation. If they're from Chicago or New York or San Francisco, they've never been in a situation like this. They've never been in an isolated situation like this. So you get a professor coming out of a city, like New York City, and they can't handle this. They can't handle this situation. It's just too isolated. I mean, where are you going to go for a beer? Right? Well, you could go hang out at Bosch's. Those guys seem to find it someplace. You could do that, but that's probably not the best idea. And if you're a professor at this institution, you probably don't want to do that. So you're going to have to drive all the way to Gallup in order just to find a beer, right? Mm-hmm. Isn't that the way it works? Okay.
Or you could bring it in, not tell anybody it happened.
You're not supposed to, but I guess you could. I have known people that did that. I don't drink, so it doesn't make any difference to me, but, you know, these guys are used to this kind of, going to the bar, or the restaurant, and having a nice white wine or something. I don't know, people do that kind of stuff.
That happened to me in Alaska when we came back down. We're like, shit, there's nowhere to get Indian food. There's nowhere to get sushi.
Exactly, no sushi, no Indian food, no Thai, you can't find any Thai food. You go to, you know, the Panda Express and, oh, that's the worst Chinese food in the world. It's like,
Nowhere to swim. When I first got here, it was, where do we swim? You know, where do we go swimming? And
Albuquerque.
And my husband was like, oh, right up here at, is it the logging road? The Y? So I was like, oh, cool, cool. I went over there, had my shortcuts on, everything,
Right.
getting ready to go swim. I got in and that water was like below my knees and I was like, where do we swim, you know? Where's the water? Then it kind of hit me, you're in Arizona.
This isn't Montana. Exactly, exactly. So see, that's a really serious problem. So you get a really good instructor who really wants to be here, but he can't handle the social aspect of it. It might be easier to send him over to Shiprock, because then he can go to Farmington. And in Farmington, you can do anything you want, I guess. I don't know, I guess. At least it's not on the reservations. At least it's not on the reservation, and there are bars in Farmington, I assume, where they sell.
And Cortez.
Cortez?
Yeah, Cortez is just right there. It's like about
Oh,
the
you-
same amount of time to get to Farmington and Cortez.
Cortez,
Cortez has bars.
Cortez, where's Cortez?
In Colorado.
It's in you have to go all the way to Colorado?
It's
It's
like
just
the
right
same
there.
distance.
Yeah.
It's
Fine
right where
booze?
the Four Corners are.
Okay.
Yeah, and like, they actually have drive-up windows to get alcohol for
Texas.
the people that don't want to be seen.
The Texans have drive-up windows in there.
I'm only saying that because I went and did my taxes over there this weekend and I seen that and I was like, oh wow.
Let's drive through.
Yeah.
We'll pick up a hamburger at McDonald's and then we'll pick up a fifth of whatever. I'm just kidding. I know. Okay. So the question is it the social situation or is it something internal? So is this person who comes here and only stays for a year, is it something wrong with them or is it something wrong with the social situation? And probably it has something to do with the social situation. This doesn't bother me at all. Not at all, because I was up in Montana where there's no people up there. You know, there's nobody there. I used to live in a county with 1.2 people per square mile. I know. Most of the roads aren't even paved up there, so this doesn't bother me at all. I'm used to it. I'm not used to having people so close to me, though. I live in a cornfield, and having somebody next door, and actually Ed doesn't make any noise at all. I never know that he's there. But the other people on the other side, they've got this little bitty dog, and the dog hates me. And she'll come running at me, and she'll get like this far away from me, just yapping like crazy, acting like she's about to take my foot off. Of course, her mouth is like this big. I mean, she's just tiny. I'm just not used to that. I'm not used to having people around me. So anyway, so I'm here anyway. Thus, people assume that what is presented is the legitimate and perpetual feelings of the actor. So if somebody isn't able to handle this, is there something wrong with them? Can they teach at another tribal college? Can they go up to SKC and teach up there? Probably. I mean, Kalispell's right there. I mean, it's in Pablo, isn't it?
It's in Pablo.
Yeah.
And then, so you got Kalispell on this side and Missoula on this side.
Exactly.
But it's closer, I think, to get to Missoula.
Sure, and there's just a ton of hippies in Missoula. I mean,
Yeah, and you don't get that much racism in Missoula versus Kalispell.
Kalispell is horrible. My God,
It
those
is
guys
really
are
bad.
Nazis. Literally, I mean, they're really Nazis.
Yeah, they
Whoa.
said like the homes of the Nazis is Kalispell and Great Falls, and Boise, Idaho.
In Boise, Idaho. It's horrible. Go to Missoula.
Yay.
They don't care.
That's
Missoula's.
probably like Durango then.
Don't go to Colorado Springs. It's a bad place too.
Really?
Evangelical Christians, oh my God. They're almost as bad as Nazis.
My aunts and my grandma always had a good time when they went there. They went for the hot springs.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I don't think they ever got any attitude, or at least
didn't.
didn't let it bother them.
I hope not. I hope not. Oh, all kinds of stuff comes out of Colorado Springs. That's on tape. I just put that on tape.
And there was a murder there too.
In Colorado Springs?
Yeah, there was a murder like 2 years ago. This girl, she was on her way home from one of the shopping centers that she worked at, and she was talking to her boyfriend, and her phone went dead, and she pulled up to her driveway, and her sister ran outside because she heard something in here. There was like 3 shots. She got shot execution style. And yeah, so I watch a lot of Dateline, and there's a lot of crime in Colorado Springs.
Colorado Springs is scary.
Or a lot of murders.
Yeah, well, they think that they can do whatever they want to do. Interesting. Anyway, okay, so all of this stuff, people assume that what they see is what you get, and this is known as a fundamental attribution error. You're assuming that this person is really the way that you think that they are, that however they're acting right now is the way that they will always act, and that's known as the fundamental attribution error. When Sylvia plays paintball, she becomes quite aggressive. Tobin had only seen her at the paintball field, so when he saw her at the grocery store with her school friends, he greeted her very loudly and called her Mad Dog because she's so aggressive on the paintball field. The friends had never seen her playing paintball, so they teased her mercilessly the fact, in reality, they saw her as a very shy person, but put a gun in her hand and she becomes something totally different. Okay, fundamental attribution error. Tobin, who had only seen her on the paintball court or field, only saw her as an aggressive female who would do anything to kill somebody. And of course, her friends had never seen her on the paintball court, so they saw her as a shy person. Fundamental attribution error. Everybody had a fundamental attribution. Their attribution was in error. Because sometimes she's aggressive and sometimes she's not. Just like the murderer guy, you know, the neighbor goes, my goodness, he's the best neighbor I've ever had. Well, they only see him as a neighbor. They've never seen him in another social situation. So, of course, that's fundamental attribution error. The male ego seems to use the fundamental attribution error often to maintain his ego. Peter Ditto set up an experiment where men met a woman, and then the woman rated the men on her impression of them. She was actually not really rating them at all. It was all a scam. She was acting either flirtatious toward the individuals or not acting flirtatious toward the individuals. That was her task. They told them that they were being rated by the female, but the female was either going to date them or not date them. As curious as this is, but it was all a setup. Afterwards, they were told that the lady was just acting, that none of this was true, that she was just either acting flirtatious toward you because that's what we told her to do, or she was not acting flirtatious toward you because that's what we told her to do. And guess how the men took this?
No, she liked me.
Everybody, all the men thought that she really liked them, no matter what. I know. And of course, that's a fundamental attribution error as well. So men are kind of deluded. I mean, if you think about it, they think that all women are always attracted to them, as confusing as this is. Now you're wrinkling your brow like this is a shock to you, but men are dumb as dirt. I mean, they really think this. And it gets them in trouble. A lot of times it'll get them in trouble because they'll start flirting with somebody that they really should leave alone because she doesn't have any clue as to. And if his ego is really strong, he won't back off. And then we get into a sexual harassment situation. And we see this all over the place. One of the reasons that all of a sudden we're hearing about James Franco sexually assaulted 5 women. Why in the world would he do something like that? Well, he's a pretty man, and he assumes that all women are attracted to him. So if he's attracted to somebody, he's not going to back off because he assumes that he's going to get whatever he wants. Does that make sense? And sometimes the women don't want to have anything to do with him, but he doesn't understand that. He doesn't recognize that. So he gets in trouble. He got in trouble. A lot of people have had the same problems. Men in power have exactly the same problems. Actors have the same problems. And of course they get in trouble, and now we're hearing about it because, well, James Franco was taken off the cover of Vanity Fair because of the accusations against him. Men are stupid. They're deluded. They assume that all women are attracted to them. Is that true? Are we really that dumb? Yes, we are. Really that dumb. We're not real bright. Some men assume that women aren't attracted to them. My son is a very, well, I'm going to show you a picture of my son. He's relatively attractive. When he worked at the bar in Hollywood, women used to give him their telephone numbers all the time. Let me tell you a quick story about my son. My son's a slob. I went out to Los Angeles. He decided he wanted to be a chef. So I went out to Los Angeles to move him into a new apartment, a new single apartment so that he could concentrate on his schoolwork. And so I moved him in January or something. So the next January, I flew back out there to see to visit my son and see what was going on. What I did, I moved him into his apartment, but I didn't have time to unpack very many boxes. We didn't have time to unpack very many boxes. Okay. So when I went back a year later, his entire apartment looked exactly like it did before I left, a year before. He hadn't done anything. He'd moved things around a little bit. It was a mess. I mean, and of course there were things piled up and whatnot. He had he had a pile of stuff in front of the door of his bedroom, and in order to get into his bed, he had to high jump over this pile of stuff. He had to long jump from the hallway into his bed. So this is like, 12 feet he has to jump over this pile of stuff and into his bed. And that's how he got into his bed. And his computer was right over there in the corner. So in order to work on his computer, he had to high jump over this pile of crap and jump onto his bed, and then he had to turn around and sit down at his desk to do his work. He's a slob. I told you he's a slob. So he had been working at the bar, and women had been giving him their telephone numbers. So I went in and I said, "Look, I know you're busy, Chris. I'll just try to clean things up a little bit for you. I'll take things out of boxes." He had boxes of books and empty bookcases. That's my kid. Okay. So, and they were in the middle of the floor. I mean, just shove it up against the side so it gives you a little bit of room to move around. This is nutty stuff. Not only that, but he had surfboards, and he had a longboard. I don't know if you know anything about surfboards. A longboard is it's like 12 feet long. And this thing, there's no place to put this longboard because the house is small. Anyway, okay, so I went and I'm cleaning everything up. And I'm putting books in bookcases and shoving the bookcases up against the wall and giving him all this open space and putting everything away. and actually putting his clothes on hangers instead of, piled on the floor. This is my clean pile, this is my dirty pile, one of those kind of deals. What else happened? Okay, so I'm in his bedroom and I'm cleaning stuff up, and I start coming across telephone numbers. Sylvia 5673-2401. That kind of stuff. And so I, call me, and lip prints on napkins, and their names and telephone numbers. I start, and I'm going, I asked him, what do you want me to do with these telephone numbers? He said, I don't know, you can just throw them away. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, somebody gave you their telephone number, maybe these are important. So I started piling these things up. It was a stack this tall. I know. Women were giving him his telephone number. I said, are any of these possible? I want a grandchild. I want knock somebody up. So, I'm stacking this stuff up. Are any of these possibilities? Oh no, Dad, stop. He hates it when I get involved with his love life. No, that's not a possibility. But he had a whole stack of telephone numbers. One of them was written on the back of a Kotex, the plastic thing, that piece of paper that comes off of a Kotex. Yeah.
My
Okay.
goodness.
Oh, I know. Who would do that? I know. Anyway, so yeah, I stacked all these things up. There were a bunch of them. And I asked him, well, are any of these women cute? He says, no, they're not serious. I don't know why they did it. These women are throwing all these, they're flirting with him, and everything's going right over his head. He has no clue. He's not hooking up with anybody. My God. I wasn't afraid he was gay. He's not gay. Certainly he's not gay. But all these women were flirting with him, and he missed it. He missed it every time.
Or he did get with them. He did hook up with them
And discarded him?
Yeah. And then I have a question. So you raised your kids in a military background, right?
Yeah, right.
How come your son is a Slav?
How come he's a Slav? Because I was in the military, not him.
Well, my dad was in the military, and he would come in and he'd be like, okay, this isn't clean, this isn't clean, this isn't clean.
I never did that. I never did that. I never made my kids clean or wash anything.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just that way. I apologize. The other thing was that my first wife left when my son was 9 months old. I know, it's a tragedy. So he had to. So I'm trying to potty train this little snot, and I can't get him potty trained, and I can't get him potty trained. And finally, I took him to the daycare, and there was this German woman in there, and she was a Nazi. She was horrible. And she would make him sit, if he wet his pants, she'd make him sit on that potty until he peed again. I mean, she was that bad. It was horrible. But at least he got potty trained. But it pissed him off. So he's an anal expulsive. Some people are anal retentives. Everything has to be clean. Well, he's the opposite. He's a slob. He's really a slob.
Oh my gosh, my husband.
Your husband's
My
a slob?
husband is like meticulous. Everything has to be
Is that right?
straight, and I'm like, where the hell did you fall from?
Yeah, that's anal retentive if you're that kind of a person. But my son's the opposite. He's an anal expulsive. And I'll show you a picture of him. He's not a bad looking kid. Andre's over there going, yeah, he's cute. He's cute. He's cute, isn't he?
He looks like that one guy on, I don't remember the show though.
He was in a movie. He was an actor, so he's in a couple of movies, but he doesn't have any speaking parts or anything. But he was in a movie one time with Mike Myers and Heather Graham. One of the Austin Powers movies. He's in the background. Anyway, he's standing there. They're waiting to do the take. He's standing there, and Mike Myers goes, wow, you're pretty. You're a really pretty guy. You look like Brad Pitt. He told him you look like Brad Pitt. And Heather Graham was sitting right there, and she said, yeah, you're kind of cute. One of those kind of deals. And Chris had this fairly large part. Mike Myers cut it all completely out of the movie. he was, because he got mad after Heather Graham said, yeah, he's kind of cute. So he cut out the whole thing out of the movie.
Oh, wow.
I know, Mike Myers. That's okay. That's okay. He didn't need to be an actor anyway. Good news though, when he became a chef, you have to clean things, or otherwise you poison people. So when he became a chef, he learned how to clean. So he's really good at cleaning things now. Okay. He's never poisoned anybody. I know. When trying to explain our own behavior, we tend to attribute behavior to situation. I was angry because everything was going wrong. When explaining other people's behavior, their behavior is what they are. He is hostile because he's an angry person. And that's the fundamental attribution error. The fact that I do things because of my situation, and other people do things because that's the way they really are. Voters come to like just elected candidates. This is called the honeymoon period. Now the strange thing is that every president has had a honeymoon period except for Barack Obama and Donald Trump. Both of those guys were under assault as soon as they became president of the United States. Barack Obama, it was terrible. He was different, and for that reason there were a lot of people that didn't like him. Bill Clinton did have a honeymoon period, but there were people that hated him from the very beginning of his presidency, who called him Slick Willie. They insulted him. They had a watch made that tens of thousands of people bought a copy of this watch, and it's got him on the dial, and it looks like he's just the slimiest person in the whole wide world. I can imagine if Hillary had been elected president, that she probably would have been under assault from the conservative right. Anyway, normally a president will get a honeymoon period. Maybe the next president we elect in 2 years will actually get a honeymoon period. We don't know. Contestants value prizes more just after receiving them. Afterwards, of course, they just won this. How important is this prize to them? People develop an instant liking for those that they're about to meet, and these are the social necessities of fundamental attribution error. And here's a picture of my kids. There they are. This is in 2002, so that was 15 years ago, 16 years ago. There's my daughter. She's in her 30s. She was in her 30s in this picture. And he's in his late 20s. Anyway, they're not bad-looking kids. And my daughter's tiny. I'm only 5'6", and here she is. I'm actually standing. I was standing up on something, and to be taller than my son. He's actually 5'8", so he's taller. Anyway, and my daughter's she's only 4'11", tiny little people. Anyway, not bad-looking kids. And I've already told you the story of all the women trying to hook up with him. The thing is that I raised him in Nebraska, and in Nebraska, people are the problem with Hollywood is that it's so superficial. You never know if somebody's telling you the truth. But if somebody comes from Nebraska and they go out to Los Angeles, they're more genuine. How's that? I can say that. Okay. Anyway, that's one of the reasons why women were so attracted to him in Hollywood. Because you have somebody come up to you, I'm a producer, and I just made a movie, you may have heard of it, Star Wars, that kind of thing. Really? You're the producer of Star Wars? Yeah, I can get you into the movies, that kind of stuff. Well, that's all lies. It's all, people have plastic lips, and they have plastic breasts, and they have plastic butts, and just about everything. And here he's a fairly genuine person. Anyway, so they liked him a lot. I'm going to skip this one. Researchers have known for decades that there's a difference between the perspective of being an actor in an event and an observer of that event. So if I'm watching somebody do something, I see one thing, but the person that is actually in the event will see something totally different. Because I'm focused on maybe them, they're focused on everything else. They're not focused on themselves. If I'm an actor, I'm focused on what's happening to me, not me. I'm not focused on me. When we are the actor, the environment around us commands our attention. When we watch an event, we watch the actor in the event, and the environment becomes less visible. So whatever it is that you're looking at, if you're looking at a select individual, you're not really seeing what's happening around that person. You're just focused on that person. But if I'm the person that it's happening to, I'm not seeing me, I'm seeing everything else. I'm seeing the entire environment. Thus, the person we see as the focus is always the cause, and that's because we're looking at them. So they look like the one, and this is one of the problems with eyewitness accounts. If I'm watching somebody, and I'm not watching anybody else or anything else, all I'm seeing is that person. So that person has to be the cause of whatever's going on, whether that's what's happening or not. So if I'm an eyewitness and I'm looking at that blonde-headed lady, then whatever happens, she's the cause of that, of whatever happens, even though she may not have anything to do with it. Let me tell you a quick story. Celeste was working undercover with the meth suppliers in Chinle. Word got back to her that her cover was blown. As she walked past the A&W on her way to her pickup, she heard a speeding car behind her. She turned and drew her pistol. She caught sight of a man sticking a rifle out the window and fired just as the car swerved into oncoming traffic. That's what happened. As Mary stepped out of Bosch's in Chinle, she saw a woman draw a gun, wheel around toward traffic, and fire indiscriminately at a car trying to get out of the way. The car plowed into oncoming traffic. When questioned on the witness stand, she did not see the rifle or perceive the car as speeding. All she saw was a woman with the gun. That's all she saw. She didn't see anything else. Well, that's her focus. How much can we see anyway? Well, the reality is we see the whole scene. But if I'm focused on the person in the middle of the screen, then I'm not going to actually perceive what else is going on. If we watch a movie, and this is a trick of cinematography, a lot of times what we're doing is we're watching the person in the middle of the scene. We're watching the main character. We're watching the pretty one. We're watching the funny one. We're watching whoever it is in the middle of the scene. We don't see what else is happening on the periphery of the screen, because we're focused on what is happening in the middle of the screen. So a lot of times, especially with old movies, you can look to see what's going on outside of the two main characters, and you see a lot of really historical, interesting things. I was watching a movie last night. It was made in 1932. As a matter of fact, it was the movie of the year in 1932. It happened one night, and they ride on a bus. This is in 1932, so they get on a bus. Well, what did buses look like in 1932? Well, if you're just focused on Claudette Colbert and
Segregation.
Segregation was taking place. Yeah, they were driving from Miami to New York, so they went through all the way through Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia. You know, they're going through the segregated South. You see one black individual in the entire movie. That's not really the important thing. But what does a bus look like? Well, it's not important because it's not in the movie. So it's not important. But you see signs and you see auto courts. Back then they didn't have motels, or they did, but normally what you had were little bitty cabins. So you would, as you're driving along the road and you decide to stop, you would rent a cabin for the night. So it's an individual house, and it's a tiny little house. You can still run into these from place to place. It's not as easy maintaining an auto court like that. It's almost like a trailer court. So you had your individual trailer. They just threw these buildings up. It's really kind of fascinating. So we don't always see everything. We don't. We focus on Clark Gable and Claudette Colbert. Clark Gable taking off his clothes. He did a striptease at the beginning of the movie. Don't get too excited. He got to his pants and then she left, so we didn't get to see anything else. We didn't get to see his underwear. Well, we got to see Claudette Colbert in his pajamas. That was kind of interesting. Daniel Lassiter and Kimberly Dudley studied confessions and confession videotapes and found that when the tape showed just the suspect confessing, there's a 100% conviction rate. If it just showed the individual saying, I did it, then there was a 100% conviction rate. When the tape also included their interrogator, the statement was more likely to be perceived as coerced. So there were less conviction rates if there was more to the tape than just the person saying, I did it. It looked like they were being coerced. The individual was being coerced. One of the most persistent fundamental attribution errors around the world is the perception of poverty. Poor people. We have poor people in the United States, but they don't starve to death. We don't find them dead in somebody's doorway in the morning. But around the world, we see this all the time, especially in Rio de Janeiro. And they just had the Olympics down in Rio de Janeiro. And one of the things they had to do before the Olympics got to Rio de Janeiro is clean up all the street kids. There's a lot of individuals that they don't want to take care of their children. So they let their children, they don't control their children. And eventually their children just wander off. Go someplace where they're being taken care of better, as sad as that may seem. And these are known as the street kids of Rio de Janeiro or of Brazil. So the question is, what is poverty? What is poverty? And we really don't understand. We really don't understand in the United States because we don't see it like it is in other places. We have problems. We have racial problems. We have ethnic problems in the United States. But the reality is that other places have these problems as well. And of course, if we went there, we would say, like the Kurds in Syria or the Kurds in Iraq. Who are the Kurds? If you saw one, could you tell that they were a Kurd? If you've never been to Iraq, if you've never been to Syria, do you have any clue what a Kurd looks like? Are they different? Do they have a long nose? Do they have orange hair? Do they have orange skin like the president? I'm just kidding. He's not tainting his skin anymore. What do they look like?
What is a Kurd?
The Kurds? Would you know? I mean, the Syrians hate them. The Iraqis hate them. The Turks hate them. They despise them. They talked about Saddam Hussein killing his own people. Well, the people that he killed were Kurds. And everybody in Iraq's going, I don't care. They were Kurds. Who cares if he kills Kurds? He can kill all the Kurds he wants. Those guys are just troublemakers. They hate him. But we wouldn't even recognize one from somebody next door. And we had no clue who they were. None whatsoever. Right? That's just the way it is. The Germans hate the gypsies. Do you know what a gypsy looks like? They look like hippies.
But there's like all different kinds of gypsy. Like there's the Irish travelers.
Irish travelers aren't gypsies.
Really?
They're Irish travelers.
Well, are they in the same area? Like.
They can, I guess. They don't usually. They fight if you put them together. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. They won't stay together very long.
Yeah.
Germans hate them. They despise them.
Germans hate everybody.
Did
They
you
don't
ever
like-
watch that show, My Big Fat Gypsy Wedding?
I thought it was Greek wedding.
Well, they have a series out. It's
Oh,
called
a
My
gypsy
Big
wedding?
Fat Gypsy Wedding. And these ladies, they'll wear like orange dresses that are, God, probably about as big as these 2 tables, you know?
Wow.
And this one lady, she was like, no one's marrying my son. And she just totally goes over there and raises hell and rips the dress off the girl. And
Beats her
there's
up.
a big old gypsy fight and everything. Yeah, they're kind of like irate people, I guess, or pissed off.
Not if nobody wants to marry their Their son, they're not so
Oh,
angry.
hillbilly. They're kind of like hillbillies.
Okay. Well, if you've never seen a hillbilly, how do you know what one looks like?
Well, if you're from Montana, you've seen a hillbilly.
You've seen rednecks, not hillbillies. Hillbillies are people from eastern Tennessee and Kentucky.
Oh.
Those are hillbillies.
Coal miner's daughter.
Coal miner's daughter, exactly. Yeah, they're coal miners. Yeah. Yeah, got one change of clothes, maybe. Or maybe they just have one set of clothes. Didn't Dolly Parton sing a song about her coat of many colors because her mother made her a coat out of all the
Rags.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
She had no money. She
Yeah,
said she
of
was
course.
dirt poor.
exactly.
So was Loretta Lynn. Dirt poor.
Yeah, exactly. Crystal Gale is Loretta Lynn's sister.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay, and Crystal Gale is from Indiana.
Are you serious? I didn't know that.
Sure, she's born in Wabash, Indiana.
Wow.
I know. They went up there to work. There's no work in the mines. You know, you can't make any money. So the Lynn family, I guess it's the Lynn family, moved up to Wabash, Indiana. And Crystal was born there. Crystal, the lady with the hair that goes all the way down to the floor.
I think the last name is Webb. Lynn is Loretta Lynn's
Lynn's
husband.
married,
Yeah.
married name.
The little Lynn.
Webb. It's not Gale, that's her middle name.
Yeah.
And actually Loretta Lynn named Crystal Gale. She's the one that named her Crystal Gale. Crystal Gale Webb or whatever the last name is. Anyway, not important, not important. So we're talking about poor people around the world. And there are people in the United States that don't understand poverty. They see people that are poor as being poor because they're lazy. They won't work. So they're undeserving of our help. We shouldn't give them anything because, well, they're lazy. And if they would just go out and get a job, why, they wouldn't be poor. Okay. People sympathetic to the plight. So there are select individuals who are in our political sphere who are very unsympathetic to poor people. They don't care. They won't give them any money. They don't want to help them. They don't want to give them health insurance. You know, that's what there's a problem with Obamacare is that it helps the lazy poor people. You know, there are people that actually believe that. So they want to get rid of Obamacare in order to take that money or that health care away from these people because they see them as lazy. People sympathetic to the plight tend to attribute poverty to external attributions. In other words, it's the reason that they are poor is because they can't find a job. There aren't any jobs. And of course, this has been the problem in the United States for an extended length of time. Unemployment now is like 3.5, I think, 3.5%, which is the lowest that it's been in a long, long time. It really is.
And that Trump, his new tax thing, where
Yeah.
he said that it's going to benefit everybody, you know?
That's what he says.
What it did is it took away like all of our, we all get 4,000 of personal exemptions. I don't know how they do their tax bracket and everything, but anyway, they took away those and they hired our child earned income tax credit
Right.
to 2,000. So the tax people are saying next year it all will just even out. It will be like, you know.
This year we're going to get a break. Next year the break's going to be gone. And the year after that, guess who gets to pay for all the tax cuts for the corporations?
Yeah.
The middle class. Yeah. That makes sense. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Okay. Well, we'll see what happens. You know, you never know what's going to happen tomorrow afternoon. So we'll see what happens. We'll see if this tax, well, it's already in. We don't have a choice. And it's going to be there until the end of at least this administration. Researchers have discovered that once an idea is implanted in people's minds, even evidence to the contrary will not dissuade them. This is known as belief perseverance. So if you have an idea about something, if you like Trump, then there's just no way that I can give you information that's going to make you dislike Trump. despite what's going on. It really doesn't matter what's going on. If I like the guy, then you can't tell me anything that's going to make me not like the guy. And vice versa. Of course, the reverse is true as well. If I don't like Donald Trump, there's nothing you can tell me that's going to make me start liking him. Okay. That's the way it works. And this is known as belief perseverance. That's why if you either watch Fox News or you watch CNN or MSNBC or CBS, you watch another news show. Because the mainstream news seems to be attacking Donald Trump. Donald Trump, and the Fox News seems to support him. So if you like him, you watch Fox News. If you don't like him, you watch CNN or CBS or whatever. You watch another news program. And that's known as belief perseverance.
Basically loyalty.
I'm sorry?
It's basically loyalty.
Yeah, well, yeah, you have created loyalty and now you're going to stick with it. I told you the story. I had a lot of friends that were relatively conservative before the election, and of course, we're arguing back and forth. Oh no, they're saying Hillary's a crook and she should be shot, that kind of thing. Look what she did to Benghazi. I think she was the one that threw the hand grenade. They killed, that kind of stuff. Just stupid stuff. And all these guys, now that Donald Trump is president, and now he has to actually do what he said he was going to do, they won't communicate with me at all. I've lost all of these friends, these conservative friends that I used to have. I'm relatively liberal, so it's really kind of fascinating. I've never lost this many friends before. They were jerks, but it's okay. While researchers tell us that long-term memory is more or less permanent, they rarely mention that it is also faulty and sometimes altogether false. So sometimes we will remember things, and this has happened to me. Sometimes I'll say, well, this is what my mom said, and my sister will say, she never said that. Really? Yeah, I was in the room when you think she said that, and she didn't say that. My sister remembers one thing, and I remember the very opposite. Well, I think my sister's an idiot. Not all sisters are idiots, but this one just happens to be an idiot. So, and it's her birthday, the 2nd of February. I know, she was born on Groundhog's Day. I think she's going to be 70.
Whoa.
I know, I think she's going to be 70. That doesn't keep her from being an idiot, of course.
But women can also remember different and further back than men can.
That may be true, but that's not the case in my sister's sister situation. So I apologize that maybe she's not really female. She focuses on select things. She's really kind of a funny person because she can be standing there, and somebody can shoot somebody and she won't even see it. She was looking at her, the person's shoes or something. Did you see the shoes? So her focus is always on something superficial. It just drives me nuts. So she never sees the same thing everybody else sees. Okay. Researchers have been able to implant seemingly long-term memories in individuals' minds that were completely false merely by using suggestion. So I can suggest to you that this happened, and you may accept it. If I have enough expertise, yeah, I can just implant a false memory in your brain. I can tell you that, wait a minute, I can tell you that, who do we all know? Bill Clinton. Do you guys remember Bill Clinton? That George W. Bush actually was at Abu Ghraib, that's that prison in Iraq. He was actually there, and he was part of the individuals that were torturing the Iraqi prisoners. Did you know that?
Nobody doubt it.
Yeah, I know. It's fairly double. But, potentially, if I had the expertise, I can plant that memory in your brain. And this is what happens with people like Hannity and, some of those these people with opinions, the opinion people on Fox News, or any news program, they can tell you that this happened, and all of a sudden you're swearing that this is exactly what happened because Hannity said it. I know, or whatever. Right? There's somebody else that everybody quotes. Oh, Bill O'Reilly. Of course, now he's out. Bill O'Reilly's gone. Why is he gone? Because he did something he was sexually harassing people at Fox News. I always thought it was weird, you know, I hardly ever watch Fox News, but every time I turned it on, there's this cute little blonde-headed news person going, are they all blonde? And the answer was, yes, they're all blonde, every one of them. Megyn Kelly, I don't know any of the others, I never watched it. Another phenomenon of memory is the likelihood that memory of an event will exclude any of the negative memories and only include the happy memories. This is kind of cool. My dad went through World War II. It was horrendous. He landed at D-Day and he marched all the way through France and then into Belgium, and he was caught in the bulge. The bulge stopped right in front of him, as exciting as that sounds. And then, of course, the German army was in retreat, and so he fought all the way through Germany into on the other side of Berlin. He was in Fulda. That's where he ended up. So he landed at D-Day and went all the way through France, Belgium, and Germany. So he fought for a year and a half, about a year and a half. Is that right? About a year, I guess. June to April, yeah, so it was about 9 months. So it's a long time. A lot of stuff happened, you can imagine. A lot of stuff happened. But if you ask my dad about the war, he talked about getting a furlough and driving around France and picking up jerry cans, 5-gallon cans. You know, those are jerry cans, okay. And he picked these things up because they ran out of jerry cans for gasoline. And what they were doing, the tankers were filling their tanks up with jerry cans, and then they were just discarding them. What are you going to do with them? So they just throw them out on the side of the road. And so he's driving around in his Jeep picking these things up, and if he picked up 100 of them, then they gave him a 3-day pass to Paris. I know.
Wow.
I know, this is kind of cool. So my dad, he gets a furlough, and he goes out and he picks up these jerry cans, and he gets a 3-day pass to Paris. They kind of skipped around Paris when he was headed in that direction. Anyway, and that's what he remembered. He remembered having such a good time driving around France and picking up jerry cans. Now, you would think that he would remember the 3-day pass he had in Paris, but when he turns in his jerry cans, he gets his 3-day pass. Guess what happened next? The Battle of the Bulge. It hit, so he didn't get to go to Paris. As funny as that is. And he still complained about that till the day he died. He complained that he never
Did he ever make it to Paris?
He never made it to Paris. That was the
Ever in
whole
his
point.
life?
Oh no, he went later.
Okay, that's what I was talking about.
Oh yeah, eventually he went to Paris, but he went with us.
Oh.
Yeah, we were stationed in Germany, and he came over to visit. Him and my mom came over, and so everybody went to Paris except me. I didn't get to go. I was working, you know. My wife got to go. My kids got to go, but I didn't get to go. But I made it to Paris. My wife and I honeymooned in Paris. So that was kind of cool. All right. So I made it to Paris too, eventually. I had to go with my dad. Anyway, okay, and this is known as rosy recollection. He went through all kinds of stuff. He was standing beside a general that a sniper shot right through the head. And it was from a long distance, so when it hit, it just exploded. The bullet exploded. It just blew his head almost completely off. And he's standing right beside this guy, so he's coated in blood and brains, you know. But he never talked it, well, he talked about it once. But the rest of the time, he never talked about it. He talked about picking up jerry cans and getting his... Strange. We need to stop right here. Next time we'll pick it up with, I won't tell any more ugly stories about people getting shot.